Hello and welcome to the Business Standard Morning Show. I'm Ishan Gera and here are the stories for the day. Tata Group has now made its debut into the Indian Premier League as a sponsor starting this year. The move comes at a time when India's largest conglomerate is increasing its digital footprint. Its much awaited super app may also hit the market by March this year. So, is the over 100-year-old company's googly meant to start with a young crowd? Our next report finds out more.
Tata Group has replaced Chinese phone maker Vivo as the title sponsor for the Indian Premier League, the biggest sports property in India. Tata Group will be the IPL's title sponsor for this year and the next, and will pay the BCCI Rs 670 crores for the sponsorship rights. For the IPL, the deal could be seen as a face saver after clashes between the Indian and Chinese armies in Ladakh's Galwan Valley in 2020. The BCCI had received a lot of backlash for having a Chinese company as the title sponsor for the IPL. This meant that Vivo pulled out of its sponsorship deal for the 2020 season, making way for homegrown Indian startup Dream11. And while Vivo returned as title sponsor for the 2021 season, there were reports about the Chinese company wanting to get out of the deal and transfer its sponsorship rights. Vivo will pay the BCCI around Rs 454 crore for the termination of its contract. But what does a well-known enterprise such as Tata Group with a loyal customer base stand to gain from being the title sponsor of the IPL? The sponsorship deal comes just as Tata is inching towards the launch of its super app Tata Neu. The app will consolidate all of Tata's consumer-facing businesses from online grocery, online pharmacy, e-commerce, consumer electronics, fashion retail, and more. Presumably, the app will also allow users to book hotel rooms in Tata-owned hotel chains such as Taj and Vivanta, while one could also book flight tickets in Air India. There will also be an option for digital and bill payments. The app is currently being tested amongst Tata Group employees and is expected to be launched around March this year, just around the time of IPL 2022 that will commence in April. At 400 billion total viewing minutes for IPL 2020 and 10 billion for the first match of IPL 2021, the T20 Cricket League is easily the most attractive sports property for advertisers and sponsors, and it's had considerable success in increasing brand recall for sponsors. IPL 2020 title sponsor Dream11 crossed 100 million users during the tournament, experiencing a 44.4% surge in traffic during the final match compared to 2019. Online gaming startup Mobile Premier League or MPL, which is the sponsor of IPL teams KKR and RCB, began in 2020 with 40 million users but ended the year with 70 million. In fact, even companies far removed from sports, such as menstrual hygiene startup 9, which was the principal sponsor for Rajasthan Royals for the 2020 season, increased monthly sales from Rs 14 crore to Rs 20 crore following IPL 2020. The surge in cryptocurrency adoption in India happened as exchanges such as CoinDCX and CoinSwitch Kuber became IPL 2021 sponsors. Sanchita Roy, head of strategy at Havas Media Group India, said, quote, "What we have observed is that across brands, personal and collective perceptions have improved with the onset of the IPL. Personal parameters like value for money and convenience, and collective perceptions of trust and respect saw the highest increase across brands."
Taking up the IPL sponsorship, uh, there can be many reasons. One is to get widespread recognition of your brand, to get some, rub off onto your brand, which might have been the reason why, uh, Vivo did the title sponsorship. But in the case of Tata, they don't need brand recognition. Brand recognition of Tata brand is almost 100%. Then the question arises, why have they done it? My understanding is Tata over the last 12 months or 24 months have made some pretty bold forays into what I would call digital tech areas. This includes setting up the Tata Super App, acquiring several, online platforms like, Big Basket and I think 1MG, etc. So in a sense, Tata is going after the young cohort, the millennials, and the reason for taking up the sponsorship would be to try and give Tata a slightly more youthful appeal, which will probably connect with the millennials and the Gen Z, which are the younger people, especially when Tata is going to roll out a lot of, products and services which are aimed at them, whether it is a, Tata Super App, Tata Click, etc., etc. So I think it's a clear strategic move to try and see if you can give the brand a slightly younger image rub off by associating with IPL.
As the expert pointed out, with its super app, Tata Group is looking to tap into the millennial customer base, which has a propensity to shop for everything online. But that would mean a slight reorientation of the business conglomerate's brand image. For that purpose, there is no better bet than becoming the title sponsor of the Indian Premier League.
To keep the IPL matches floodlights running, tons of coal is burnt in power plants somewhere. But the country has not commissioned a new coal fired power plant for quite some time now. The old ones are being phased out, but there has been no announcement on a new plant in the last 1.5 years, amid an accelerating transition to renewables. At the same time, India's coal demand will still see modest growth. Our next report unravels this paradox.
Banks around the world are increasingly deserting coal projects, from mining to power plants. And the case is no different in India. Coal is, after all, the most polluting fossil fuel and the biggest contributor to climate change. India is currently constructing 34 gigawatt of new coal capacity on top of its existing fleet of 233 gigawatts. Notably, a recent study by independent climate change think tank E3G has found that since 2015, 326 gigawatts of proposed coal projects in India have seen cancellations, which means a 92% decrease in the pipeline. The economics are also not favorable towards building new coal plants, which means India's pre-construction pipeline of 21 gigawatts risks getting scrapped. India's renewable power tariffs are among the lowest in the world. It has seen a remarkable increase in the capacity addition of renewable energy generation led by solar and wind power in the past decade. Several power plants are set to be decommissioned in the coming years. Coal plants are normally decommissioned after the completion of their useful life, which could range anywhere from 25 to 45 years. Does this mean coal has a dim future in India? Not at all. India won't see a fall in coal demand for the next decade or so. Before we analyze what a fall in thermal power capacity means for coal usage, Business Standard's Shreya J tells us why coal will remain our mainstay energy source in the medium term.
India has decided to become a net carbon zero economy by 2070, but there are concerns on the rising usage and demand of coal in the country. Currently, 25% of India's installed capacity is met by renewable energy sources, and if you add large hydro in the mix, it touches 40%. But on the supply side, currently 70% of India's electricity demand is met through coal based power, even when thermal units are running at half of their capacity. Government's think tank Niti Aayog estimates that coal demand in India will peak by 2040 to 1.2 to 1.5 billion ton, and thermal power will touch 250 gigawatt from currently 180 gigawatt. International Energy Agency has said that currently there is no other energy technology in India which can replace coal-based power. National miner Coal India Limited has a production target of 1 billion ton for this current decade. Government's own estimates say that the future of coal is secure in the country for at least 2 decades, unless there is a storage technology is available in the country for renewables and it is available for 24 hours. Coal and thermal power is here to stay.
The International Energy Agency estimates India's coal demand to grow 4% annually till at least 2024. And a report by Niti Aayog in December said that coal-based electricity generation capacity in India is likely to peak at about 250 gigawatts by the end of this decade, whereas coal-based electricity generation will slow down and likely peak a few years later. Amid such a forecast, an expert panel set up by the think tank has proposed a scrappage policy for thermal power plants. Approximately 54 gigawatts of coal plants could be considered for retirement by 2030. What does this mean for India's coal demand and consumption? To answer this question, we have with us Madhura Joshi.
So the global pipeline of proposed coal power plants has collapsed by 76% since the Paris Agreement in 2015. In India as well, we see that India is transitioning away from coal and faster than what many would have thought possible. While some studies show project an increase in coal power capacity by 2030, other studies have shown that coal power just does not make economic sense in the Indian context. There's an overcapacity in the system. News articles on expert committees formed by the Ministry of Power also seem to indicate that the recommendations of the committee are to halt new coal-based power plants from coming online and retiring inefficient coal power plants. However, when we look at coal mining or coal demand basically from mines, that may still go up in the short run. This could be driven by higher use compared to the current levels from the existing power plants itself, because the current power plants are functioning at a lower capacity levels, as well as growth in non-power sectors such as iron and steel production, where alternative technologies are not available or not competitive in the short run. So essentially, while coal power plants and investments in coal power plants is likely to go down and is likely to move towards no new coal power, coal mining demand may increase in the short run based on electricity generation requirements as well as demands from other sectors. From basically 15-20 years from now, I do see the share of coal drastically reducing in India's electricity mix, and coal demand in absolute coal demand starting to decline in 2040. 2030 will be the peak, and then in the 2030s to 40s, there will be a decline in coal demand.
What this means is that a reduction in thermal power generation capacity will not translate into lower coal consumption. Existing power plants are in a comfortable position to absorb the growth in coal demand over the medium term, which could also improve their efficiency. Since funding is hard to come by in the sector, new projects beyond those already under construction are unlikely to come up. This, however, will not mean that the end of coal is near, even though it will grow at a much slower pace than renewable power generation.
After the power plants, let us move to markets. Equity dilution and discounted price of debt conversion has worried investors of Vodafone Idea and Tata Teleservices. On the bourses, the shares of Vodafone Idea plunged 21% on Tuesday but bounced back 8.5% on Wednesday. The shares of Tata Tele too were locked at 5% lower circuit yesterday. But are these concerns even warranted? How can the company survive post the debt to equity conversion? Let's find out.
Debt-strapped Vodafone Idea and Tata Group-owned Tata Teleservices have decided to convert interest on deferred spectrum and adjusted gross revenue dues into equity, buying time to survive. After the issuance of additional equity, the government will own nearly 36% stake in Vodafone Idea and roughly 9.5% in TTML. While Vodafone Idea's management has clarified that the decision-making power will continue to rest with the promoter group and the government has refrained from holding a seat in the board, Tata Teleservices is yet to communicate details to investors. On the bourses, the shares of Vodafone Idea plunged 21% on Tuesday but bounced back 8.5% on Wednesday, reflecting the confusion in the minds of market participants. The shares of Tata Tele too were locked at the 5% lower circuit yesterday. So what's worrying the street, and are these concerns even warranted? We spoke to some analysts to demystify the concerns. To begin with, the shares of Vodafone Idea will be issued to the government at 10 rupees per share, which is about 22% lower than yesterday's closing price. Those of Tata Tele, meanwhile, are likely to be issued at 41.5 rupees a piece, which is a staggering 85% discount to current levels.
As far as Idea is concerned, it is decently close to the market price. Okay, it's about 30% cheaper. Okay, now if it is TTML, then you can say it is much cheaper because the TTML price is about 300. But then again, we don't know as to what is the real value of TTML because there has been a stupendous rise for reasons not known. Yeah, so you never know whether it is cheap or expensive because it was quoting at whatever single digit before it moved up, and there are no comments from the Tata management.
Baliga says the second area of concern is large equity dilution in Vi and Tata Tele. It should be positive for Vodafone Idea as they are short of liquidity. Moreover, the government has assured that it will stay invested in Vi, hence providing stability to the company. However, if the government books out post buying stake in TTML, it won't come as a surprise. Moving on to the third concern, Gaurang Shah of Geojade believes a turnaround in growth outlook appears difficult as there is a large debt that remains to be serviced by the companies.
I don't know whether you know anybody who is still using a SIM card of Tata Tele. And their operations were restricted only in Maharashtra. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. So, what is there in terms of companies' growth prospects or business model? I am totally in dark. And how will it go forward? So, in terms of operation, what does the company called Tata Tele Services Maharashtra do? We need clarification on that. And what will the government do in case if they have to become a stakeholder? Okay, now this is as far as Tata Tele Maharashtra is concerned. For Vodafone, even if you minus this 16,000 crore debt of AGR, which is got converted into equity of 35% to the government, there is still a large portion on the balance sheet in form of debt. What happens to that? Who will service it? On the second point, every month they are losing close to 15 lakhs to 25 lakhs subscriber base. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. So if they go on losing these kind of subscriber base, whom will they service? Will they have any subscriber base at the end of the year or 2 years? Third, this business of telecom service provider is a capital intensive business. Where is the money going to come? And I think if one wants to get into an investment philosophy of telecom service provider in India, then Reliance Industries because of Jio Business and Bharti Airtel are better companies.
Analysts at Kotak Institutional Equities too expect the government to increase its stake in VIL further, as and when the cumulative deferred amount of 92,000 crore rupees pertaining to AGR dues and spectrum liabilities becomes payable post the end of the moratorium period. For Deven Choksi, hopes of Vi and TTML survival hangs on a possible revamp in their business models.
See, currently you are only looking at this telecommunication company's business model as a B2C business model, mobility-based business model. Why don't you look at this business model as a B2B business model? Today, just example, Tata Group has got how many number of enterprises in their group? More than 100. Each of these enterprises would have multiple number of stakeholders, suppliers as well as the customers. Suppose if Tata Group converts that entire delivery mechanism online, which they are trying to do under Tata Neo, okay? In that case, I think they would be requiring the B2B connection to be given to their scope of customers, I think, who are basically taking this particular thing from them. So isn't it, I think, a business model by itself? It become a captive infrastructure, an ecosystem that they would have. So that will be a meaningful thing. Similar thing, it can happen for Vodafone Idea. Aditya Birla Group has got plenty of organizations, I think, across the country and also, I think, in the universe. Now, if they end up providing this entire solution instead of B2C or B2B, okay, why not? I think this can generate revenue for them. I think there is a business model which will also get emerged and it will get changed. So in my viewpoint, I think to conclude so easily by the market that there is no prospect lying ahead, I think it's not correct.
So, how would investors play the telecom theme? According to Baliga, retail investors should avoid TTML due to lack of clarity. We, on the other hand, can be looked at from short-term perspective due to government backing. For Edelweiss Securities, we remains unattractive till it has a clear roadmap to support ARPU growth. Against this backdrop, price movement in these two companies along with rival firms Bharti Airtel and Reliance Industries will be tracked by the markets today. That apart, reaction to CPI inflation and IIP data, Q3 results of Infosys, TCS and Wipro and global cues will sway the indices.
Rising cases of COVID-19 didn't upset the street as the indices continued the upward march yesterday, but they are definitely unsettling the government, which recently approved 2 new vaccines, making the country's arsenal against COVID-19 richer. But ever wondered what is the basic difference between these vaccines? What platforms are used to develop them? Our next report tells us more.
So far, about 63% of adult Indians have received both the doses of COVID-19 vaccines, and more than 90% have got at least one dose. India has majorly relied on the viral vector vaccine Covishield for its vaccination drive. Over 88% of the doses given out so far have been of Covishield, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine manufactured locally under license by the Serum Institute of India. Covaxin accounted for just a fraction. The 2 new vaccines approved for emergency use last month are Serum Institute of India's Covovax and Biological E's Corbevax. With last month's approval, the country now has 8 vaccines in its kitty. Apart from the 4 discussed earlier, the remaining 4 are Sputnik V, Zycov-D, Moderna and Johnson & Johnson. Covishield uses the viral vector technology, while Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are based on messenger RNA or mRNA. Vaccination in Western countries has been led by mRNA vaccines. Let us see what all vaccine platforms we have. Broadly, there are 4 types of platforms which are used in making the vaccine worldwide. They are RNA, viral vector, inactivated virus, and protein-based platforms. Here, we are discussing the 2 most popular platforms on which most vaccines have been developed. They are viral vector and mRNA platforms. Let us understand the difference between the two, starting with the viral vector vaccine. But before that, let us understand that coronaviruses are named so because of the crown-like spikes on their surface, called spike protein or S protein. These spike proteins are the most used target for vaccines. Now, let us understand what a viral vector vaccine is. It uses a harmless version of a different virus called a vector to deliver information to the body that helps it protect you. Genetic material from the target virus, in this case the COVID-19 virus, is placed inside the viral vector. Once it enters a person's cells, it gives the cells instructions to make harmless copies of the spike protein. As the cells display the spike protein on their surfaces, the immune system starts producing antibodies and a type of white blood cells to fight off what it believes is an infection. If a person is later infected from the COVID-19 virus, these antibodies are already there to fight them. The vaccine doesn't contain the COVID-19 virus. Moreover, it does not change the DNA in any way. Covishield, Oxford AstraZeneca, Janssen or J&J, and Sputnik V and Sputnik Light use this platform. mRNA vaccine. While mRNA vaccine uses genetically engineered messenger RNA created in a laboratory to teach our cells how to make a harmless variant of the spike protein that is found on the surface of COVID-19 virus. The presence of a foreign protein triggers a normal immune response, which produces antibodies that protects us from infection if the real virus enters the body. The vaccine is made of mRNA wrapped in a coating called the lipid nanoparticle that makes the delivery easy and keeps the body from damaging it. mRNA vaccine does not contain any virus, so it cannot give you an infection. After the mRNA delivers the instructions, our cells break it down immediately. Pfizer BioNTech and Moderna use this technology to fight off the virus.
Meanwhile, in good news, the Delhi government said yesterday that coronavirus cases have stabilized and restrictions may be lifted in the next few days if all goes well. That's all we have for you today. We'll be back tomorrow with more news and analysis. Thank you for watching.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.